First enter the default IP address of 192.168.0.126 in the browser. The RedScan Pro is going to prompt you to set a password. Passwords must contain a combination of at least two of the following: uppercase, lowercase letters, numbers and symbols. Once saved, you will be presented with a login screen. Login screen username is root, and the password is the one you've just created. Select the language and then go into the network settings. Here, the device can be set to DHCP or static IP address. Just for the purposes of this demonstration, I am changing the IP address. The gateway and subnet can also be changed here. You can now save and reboot. Detector will restart, which should take around 30 seconds. If you run a continuous ping, you can see the unit has gone offline. See now the units come online with the new IP address. The installation continues. First, you should select the appropriate frequency of the power supply, 50 Hz in Europe or 60 Hz in the US as the example, and click Next. Now you have the ability to adjust the mounting position of the sensor using the assistance camera. The RedScan Pro can physically be rotated and positioned using the red line on the assistance camera as a guide to the approximate position of the detection beam. Once complete, click Next. Now you are assessing the detection mode, where you determine whether the unit is indoors, outdoors, and whether you need to activate the range expansion mode. The expansion mode is an exception mode that should only be used after consulting with the Optex technical team. Next, you should perform an area set. Once complete, we can see the detection area has been set. You can click Finish or click Go Back to make any changes. Upon finishing, the detector will restart and accept the detection area. When the screen refreshes, you can see the Settings button in the bottom left. The initial configuration is complete, and it is time to move on to the device configuration. This section focuses on the home screen and the various icons and buttons. On the top center section of the screen, you can see the model type, the firmware version, along with the date and the firmware release. In the top left corner, a series of buttons are available to manipulate the screen. The light yellow box around the outside of the detection zone indicates the maximum sensing area capability of the RedScan Pro. The grey shaded area in the actual detection zone that has been created by the area set carried out in the initial configuration. On the top right corner, you can see who is currently logged into the device and help file. In the bottom left is the settings button that will be covered later in the training. In the bottom right, we have the current profile, a button to take a snapshot, a button to begin the recording, and one to go full screen. Starting with the top left corner icons, the plus and the minus are there to zoom out and zoom in. The zooming can also be done using the mouse wheel instead of the plus and minus icons. You can move the map by dragging the mouse. The home icon takes you back to the home display. The two stack arrow buttons are there to switch between the home map and the assistant's camera view. The next icon is to flip the map upside down. The vertical triangle icon is to flip the map sideways left to right. The last icon on the top left is to open up a pop-up window to enable to view simultaneously the assistant's camera and detection windows. Now we will explore the status display. The status display bar is located on the right hand side of the screen. To open the bar, click on the blue arrow. Here you can see the current status of the input, the status of the 6 outputs, the current alarm status, and the event status code. The details showed on the bar will be covered in the tech training. And also see whether we are in normal operation or whether there is a fault with the detector. To close, click again on the blue arrow. In the bottom right, we have the current profile, a button to take a snapshot, a button to begin recording, and one to go full screen. This section is about device settings. To access the settings menu, click on the blue settings button located at the bottom left corner. You are now in the setting menu, and the red save button on the right will enable you to save any changes to the settings on the RedScan Pro unit. Now let's go through each button in the settings menu. To start, click Detection Range. The settings will appear on the right. Select indoor or outdoor depending on your requirements. Detection mode can be set vertical, horizontal or auto. If required, the detection expansion mode can be activated here, but please consult with the Optex technical team before using this mode. Click Area Set to start the area set every time any parameters have been changed. Once done, click Save to apply any changes to the detector, then OK in the pop-up window. Finally, click OK on the confirmation pop-up. The next section is Detection Profile 1. Click first on Detection Area, where you can input the detection ranges, height or depth, and the offset. Click on Edit Area to edit the detection area. In this part, you can use the crop tool to manually cut out areas from the detection range, and then the edit tool to adjust as required. In the restore section, you can revert to the last saved sensing area or reset to all sensing area. In the display section, we can choose whether to display the sensing area or whether the sensing area updates live or not by placing the tick in the checkboxes. In the next section, Area Masking Allocation, you can configure either masked areas or zone allocation. Once you have selected your choice, confirm by clicking OK on the pop-up window, then click Edit to open the configuration. For the masking, you can select areas that you wish to mask, for example, to avoid detecting unwanted objects in the area, by using the pen tool to select a single segment, or the rectangle tool to mask a larger area. The eraser tool can be used to delete segments. When done, click OK. For the allocation area, you can assign segments to zones A11 through B22 using the pen and rectangle tools as shown now on the screen. There is also an undo and redo function in the edit section. Click on the save button to apply these changes. Click Detection in the menu to be presented with detection parameters. If you tick the box marked Use Multi-Detection Sensitivity, you can set each zone's parameters individually. If left unchecked, the parameter changes are global. You can modify detection target, move in distance, mobile object mode only, sensitivity, presence mode only, minimum target size, maximum target size, minimum tracking size, maximum tracking size, and the area to ignore from the ground, vertical mode only. The next menu item is Detection Advanced, where you can adjust the parameters for non-detection zone measured from the detector, vertical mode only, environmental resistance, auto area adjustment, alarm duration, boundary recognition accuracy, and all of the trouble alarms. The DQ, environmental disqualification output, is used to output an alarm signal in the event of a harsh environment such as fog, rain or snow for example, and should be used to alert the end user for the requirement to use additional detection methods when the RedScan cannot clearly define objects. Output terminals. Here you can determine which events trigger each of the output terminals and whether they are in normally open or normally closed mode. Only configured alarm allocation zones will appear here. When you have finished allocated the output, click Save. On-Viv digital inputs. Here you can either interlock these with the output configuration defined in the previous screen, or you can assign events to each as before. In the next section, On-Viv Motion Alarm, you can set the On-Viv Motion Alarm to respond to the selected events. The Detection Profile Copy allows us to copy the settings or in a selection of settings from Profile 1 to Profile 2. Detection Profile 2 is configured the same way as Profile 1, and you can also copy settings from Profile 2 to Profile 1 if required. We are now coming on to the Event Code menu item, where you can configure all the parameters for the IP alarm transmission. First of all, you should select the protocol UDP, TCP, or both UDP and TCP. You can configure each section accordingly. Starting with the UDP protocol, please scope Broadcast or Unicast. Enter then the IP address or event code receiver, port number, number of transmissions. Moving on to the TCP, please enter the IP address or event code receiver and port number. ID. Here you can determine whether the device is default, last octet of the IP address of the unit, or a predefined unit ID. To configure the predefined unit ID, check the arbitrary detector ID. Transmission. You can configure here the transmission interval for the trouble events, the clear code timing for the trouble event is ended, enable the heartbeat for the device monitoring, and whether to send the event immediately to the alarm activation. Click Save. Next, select View menu item to set up the visual elements of the browser window. Laser, show the detection range, show the sensing area, show the detection area, show detected object information, red circles, show candidate object information, blue circles, not triggering an alarm. Video, show text and a free text field for entering a name, show date, date format, show time, time format, show profile number, show event code, and the font characteristics. You can also select whether to display the laser line on the image and whether to show detected candidate object locations. Menu. Here you can choose the unit of measurement, metric or feet. There is also a checkbox for displaying advanced menus, which we will cover in the later section of this training. Date and time section. You can set the time and date functions, such as time zones, NTP servers, and manual synchronization. When finished, save. The next section covers the network settings of the RedScan Pro. In the TCP/IP basic menu, you can make changes to the basic configuration of the device, similar to the settings in the initial configuration. One additional option here is the MTU, Maximum Transmission Unit, which can be adjusted if required. For example, in a secured network with restrictions on packet size. In the TCP/IP advanced settings, you have a further option for the network configuration. It allows you to enter a DNS settings and domain details. We also have the option to change the default port numbers for the HTTP and HTTPS and RTSP to enable the RTSP authentication. The final checkbox enables and disables web services discovery for automatic discovery of devices on the network. Moving on to SNMP, where you can enable and disable the SNMP version 1 and version 2. And for SNMP version 3, you can configure all required attributes: the username, security level, authentication algorithm, authentication password, private key algorithm, private key password. Once complete, click Save. We are now covering the maintenance and information section of the RedScan Pro. In the system settings, you can perform a number of maintenance tasks. Restart restarts the RedScan Pro device. No changes are made, it's simply a reboot. In Factory Reset, you are given two options. Keep network settings. This performs a factory reset but keeps the configured TCP and IP settings. Clear network settings. This performs a full factory reset to the default IP address 192.168.0.126. If there is a requirement to upgrade the firmware on the unit, this is where to do it. Click on Select Firmware File to browse the location of your firmware, and then click on Update Firmware to apply the new firmware. Language. In the event that you wish to change the language of the interface, this is where it can be done. Moving on to the logs. You can access the system log to see the activity of the software of the RedScan Pro since boot up. The access log contains details of any interactions made on the browser interface. You should make yourselves familiar with the location of these menu items, as they will be useful in any troubleshooting with your local RedScan support team. Import and export. This section allows you to import settings that have been exported from another device, including the basic TCP and IP settings. If the box is checked, you can also export the settings from this unit for importing elsewhere. In the information menu, you can access the product information where it displays the product model, serial series, firmware version, etc. This is also information that will be requested for your support team in event of any troubleshooting. You can also access the installation information where you can input information that has been useful to your site. You can enter a product short name and/or a description along with the mounting information as shown. This concludes the basic settings of the RedScan Pro. The next section will cover the advanced setup. This section is covering the advanced settings of the RedScan Pro. We would highly recommend discussing these features with your local Optex technical support team before making any changes to these settings to ensure the device is configured optimally. Incorrect configuration of the advanced settings can impact the device functionality and communication. Start video. If you go back to View and Menu, settings now and enable Always Show Advanced Settings, you can configure additional functions in the detector. Starting with Input Terminal, this is where you can define what the input trigger does. You can define it as None, Detection Profile Switching, to switch between two profiles configured earlier, Area Set to perform a new area set, Detector Check to carry out a self-diagnostic check of the sensor. You can also determine the judgment time of the input and whether it's normally open or normally closed. In the laser settings, you can set up the window heater, providing the accessory has been installed to the unit, including the heater output level, low, normal, maximum or high. Please be aware that to operate at -40 degrees, the unit would need to be powered via an external DC power supply. There is an ability to adjust the laser angle, plus or minus 5 degrees. You can also select the area set mode, auto, outdoor or indoor. You can disable the wall tamper if not required, and you can set the LEDs on the RedScan to always be on or off. Moving on to the camera settings. You can first adjust the image parameters of the assistance camera and select a distortion correction mode. Then can select the day or night mode switch and decide whether or not to use the wide dynamic range function. The flicker correction should be set the same as the frequency as the power line frequency from the initial configuration. In the Privacy Mask menu, you can define up to 8 privacy areas of the camera view. You can draw and adapt the shapes to the area you wish to mask as shown on the screen. Notify internal error determines whether the internal error of the camera mode is detected by the sensor check. The next menu we're going to look at is the OnVIF Media Profile to configure the settings of the OnVIF video stream. You can select the video resolution, the bitrate, frame rate, and the GOP length. The G encoding section allows you to configure the resolution, compression, ratio, and frame rate. The event log menu includes the record and play settings. For record, you can determine which events are recorded in the event log and pre- and post alarm recording times. The play section allows you to search the event log, the trigger action, and to play back events returned by the search. We're now going to go through the security settings, which is our final section in the configuration training for the RedScan Pro. The user management menu manages people who will have access to the RedScan Pro unit via the web browser interface. It allows you to add, modify or delete users. OnVIF user management. Here you can add, modify or delete users with access to the OnVIF stream and configure their permission level. Certificates. In this area, you can install certificates, view the properties of existing certificates, delete certificates, create self-signed certificates, and finally, create a certificate signing request. HTTPS. You can determine whether connection to the device is via HTTP, HTTPS, or both. You can also select any certificates installed at the previous stage. IEE 802.1x. Here you can enable the 802.1x feature. Once enabled, you can define the EAP type PEAP-MSCHAP-V2 or EAP-TLS, along with the username and password, authentication server name, and any required certificates. The full configuration of the RedScan Pro is now complete. Congratulations!